Using Chat GPT, Navigating Ethics and the Law. Hello folks, Richard Fontenay here. Welcome to the Fontenay Magazine podcast, or welcome back. Thank you for joining us today, and I do appreciate your participation. And if you are so inclined, give me a thumbs up and subscribe to this channel. I really do appreciate you doing that. And thank you again. Now, today's topic is about ensuring that you are an ethical, legal, and respected Chat GPT internet marketer. Why? Because your business depends on you being ethical, legal, and respected. Now, I first wrote about this subject in an article in the Fontenay magazine back in October 25th, 2020. You can check it out if you want to in the link I provided in the description. Now, that article did not deal with Chat GPT. So today I want to augment it with some thoughts about Chat GPT. And as I have done in the past, you can access a free script for this podcast, and it can be found at the Fontenay magazine storefront. And I've provided a link in the description as well. Now, during this podcast, I'm going to be shortening the term Chat GPT to chat only. So now let's get on with it. Chat GPT is a powerful tool for various applications, including customer service, education, and research. But just like any other technology, it must be used ethically and legally to avoid potential harm to individuals or to society as a whole. So first, I suggest that people generally understand what is meant by the term legal. I think that people basically understand what legal means. But I'm wondering whether internet marketers really appreciate what is meant by ethics and why it's important to them. My experience in the field suggests that there are many internet marketers or digital marketers, and even bricks and mortar businesses using the internet, that are confused about the ethics. And they just operate as if ethics didn't matter. Now, from my perspective, ethics does matter. Most professions worth their salt have ethical standards by which their members must live by. And if they don't, there are several consequences, including losing a license to practice. Now, the nub of ethics is to act freely within the confines of what is perceived as good. So, an ethical stance is all about acting and making decisions for the good of others, and acting in such a way that it is morally right by following universal principles or values. In order to do this, people must act with good intentions while carrying out their business. And they must do it in a way that is perceived as good. In other words, that which is desired or approved by others. So, there is a sense of otherness, goodness, moral integrity, and values when it comes to ethics. Now, here are 10 ethical considerations I uncovered when we are using chat. Number 1. One of the primary ethical concerns when using chat is privacy. The chat is a language model that can access and store personal information, including names, addresses, and other sensitive data. So it is critically important to ensure that the model that we use is designed with strong privacy protections, such as data encryption and user consent. Number 2, chat can have the potential for bias in its responses. Now, machine learning algorithms are trained on large data sets that may have biases or stereotypes associated with them. And thus, these biases and stereotypes manifest themselves in the model's responses. Therefore, it's crucial to evaluate and mitigate any biases or stereotypical responses that might be there. Now, number 3, when we use chat to write articles or blogs, it's essential to ensure that the content produced is original and not a direct copy of someone else's work. Now, using chat to generate ideas or to supplement writing can be useful, but it is important to maintain ethical standards and provide proper attribution where necessary. Number 4 is one of the most important issues when using chat, and that is using it for scamming purposes. Scamming is highly unethical and illegal. Scamming involves using deceptive tactics to trick individuals into giving up their personal or financial information. And so using chat to do this is a violation of both ethical and legal standards. So the bottom line is just don't scam. Number 5 is all about transparency. So when using chat for marketing purposes, it's important to consider what transparency is and the meaning of transparency. So what I'm talking about here is to inform the audience that the content has been generated by a machine and not by a human. This can be accomplished by indicating a disclaimer or labeling the content as AI generated. And this is similar to, I believe, what I said earlier. This ensures that your audience is not misled or thinking that you created the content, which can be a violation of certain advertising standards. So be informed that I have used Chat GPT as a source for this podcast, but I've tailored the information for the purposes of this podcast. Number 6, internet marketers must ensure that chat-generated content is truthful and not misleading. Now, I found that chat can generate a large amount of content quickly. If anyone has used chat that's listening, you know that it quickly spurts out information once we've added a question. But that being said, it's important to monitor the content to ensure that it is accurate and truthful. Any misleading advertising, for example, can harm consumers and damage an internet marketer's reputation. So that's a critically important item to consider. Number 7, internet marketers must also ensure that the use of chat does not result in any kind of discrimination or harm to marginalized communities. As I mentioned earlier, chat can be biased if the training data used to train the model contains biased or discriminatory information. Hence, it's important for the internet marketer to ensure that the information is inclusive and it is diverse to protect against enabling harmful biases and stereotypes as you begin to generate the content. And this is similar, but it's different. Now, internet marketers need to keep in mind cultural sensitivity. They sell products and services worldwide, and as such, digital content needs to be, what we need to do is consider the ethics and the values and the moral stance of other cultures. It's important to understand that an ethical marketing strategy in one culture may not be acceptable in another culture. And so what I do in Canada may not necessarily be acceptable in another country. Now, internet marketers must also respect individuals' privacy. I mentioned this earlier as number one. This means that they should obtain explicit consent from individuals before collecting their personal data to generate any kind of personalized content. In this case, marketers should ensure that any data collected is protected and not used for unethical or harmful purposes. Now, as a sidebar, in the article that I referred to earlier, dated October 2020 in the Fontenay magazine, I wrote the following, and this is a fairly lengthy quote. So, quote, another example was when a product developer devises a way to get commissions through the so-called underground. Now, you get emails and commissions by undercutting the rules. For example, accessing someone's emails on YouTube without their permission. And this was presented to me as legal. But is it really ethical? So whenever I see the word underground now on a sales page, red flags go up in my head. You see, I think ethical standards suggest getting permission before underhandedly building a business on the back of someone else's hard efforts. Now, this is a bit tricky, though, because new products are most often fashioned after someone else's idea. For example, in the bricks and mortar business, if you have a shoe factory, and Factory X makes shoes and constructs their shoes, but they do so hopefully in that they are better and have a greater value than its competitors. Now, if they do that, that is Factory X's competitive advantage and allowed in today's marketplace. So that's perfectly legal and ethical and allowed in today's marketplace. Now, in the internet marketing world, we often see something a little different. The difference relates to not adding value, but using someone else's product or production or copy without adding any value. It's just piggybacking on it for someone else's or for the person who's copying it for their own gain. However, you can do this if the developers give you a license to take their stuff, which allows you to put it out there for public consumption. Now, even then, it's still best practice to reference where the work came from unless otherwise indicated. Now, I'm not talking about private licensing rights, which is known as PLR. So with PLR, the creator has given permission to use or change the product. And you can actually pass the PLR just as it is, or pass it on just as it is, or make the PLR your own. Well, basically, you're changing it and adding value to it. And from my vantage point, this is the best way to use PLR. Another example is when writers let you use their copy with permission for a blog, as an example. All perfectly legal, ethical, and respectful. Now, number 10 is something that I need to address, and that is there is a consideration that is related to university students, one of my targeted audiences. One of the major concerns in universities relates to students writing papers without regard to academic integrity. Now, using chat to write a paper without proper attribution or citation can be considered plagiarism and is a violation of academic integrity. And as such, it's important to use chat as a tool to assist in the research, assist in the writing of the paper that you're presenting, but not to write the entire paper as a copy of chat. Now, in addition to the ethical considerations, it's crucial that you use chat legally. Now, I want to be clear here, I am not a lawyer, so if you have concerns about anything I say in this segment of the podcast, I highly recommend you consult a lawyer. I have rounded up what I consider to be 5 general legal considerations as I understand them. So here we go. The first one really relates to the jurisdictions. Now, there are many jurisdictions, and there are laws that govern the use of technology and for various purposes, including such things as data privacy, intellectual property, and consumer protection. So it's important to ensure that the chat that you use complies with these laws, such as obtaining permission for data collection and use. Secondly, any chat must not violate intellectual property rights, such as copyright or trademark laws. So if you're using chat to generate text or content, it's essential to ensure that it doesn't infringe on any existing copyrights or trademarks. Number 3, internet marketers who write content must keep in mind that using chat to generate such content may be potentially liable for the content that the chat generates. Now, I discussed an ethical consideration about this, so also be aware that if the content contains defamatory or harmful information, you could be subject to legal action. Now, there could also be specific regulations governing the use of artificial intelligence and machine learning technologies in some jurisdictions, but may not apply to you in your country. For instance, the European Union's General Data Protection Regulation, or GDPR, requires that individuals must be informed if the artificial intelligence is being used to make decisions that affect them. So it's important to become aware of those regulations and ensure compliance with them when using chat. And number 5, this is another legal consideration, but not necessarily the last one. I want to make sure that you consider the security of data when using chat. Sensitive data used to train the model or generate content must be kept secure to prevent unauthorized access or use. So failing to secure data can result in legal penalties, such as fines or lawsuits, if it's being used untoward. Now, chat is a relatively new phenomenon. And although we have had remnants of it in the past, it has burst into the scene in full force in the last, let's say, several months. Now, there are people who for and against this new phenomenon, from psychological, sociological, legal, academic, anthropological, and even religious perspectives. The ethical and the legal issues are really at their infancy stage and are still unfolding. So respective governments are trying to catch up to chat and chat's explosion, and only beginning to address the concerns for the common good. So internet marketers need to be vigilant and on top of the changes that are taking place in various jurisdictions. So yes, we must use chat with the right intention, be vigilant in using it, and ensure that we use it in a way that promotes the greater good for all. So what can we learn from all of this? Well, there are a host of ethical and legal considerations when using Chat GPT. They require that internet marketers make a commitment to maintaining their integrity, protecting and securing the privacy of individuals, mitigating bias, avoiding scamming activity, keeping to strong ethical standards, and complying with the relevant laws and regulations. And it is important to realize that the laws and the regulations and the policies are still unfolding. However, if we take the considerations outlined in this podcast seriously, we can begin harnessing the power of artificial intelligence technology and do it in a responsible manner and ensure that our chat is used for the greater good. Now, hopefully, this podcast has given you some insight from my perspective of the ethical and legal considerations for the internet marketer. Let me know in the comments below what you agree with in this podcast, what you don't, and any other comments you may have. Now, I'm looking forward to meeting with you again next Wednesday. But in the meantime, don't forget to subscribe to this channel, and thank you for doing that. And make sure you obtain a free copy of this podcast in what I have identified in the description below. As always, folks, stay safe, keep well, and continue becoming the best version of yourself. Bye for now.